That's what it's all about. The WWE World Heavyweight title.
These videos are satiric reviews. You don't have to agree, but don't bitch about it. I hate this channel.
Hey there, I'm Social Injustice Warrior V Infuso, and we've talked a lot about the Big Red Machine Kane several times on this channel before. And we'll probably continue to talk about him several times in the future, because love him or hate him, there's no denying that he has one of the most interesting careers within the WWE. I mean, he's done everything from play burn victim, to becoming somewhat of a ladies' man, to being a necrophiliac. That's quite a resume there. And I think one of the most interesting things about the career of Kane is that despite being billed as the Big Red Monster and the Devil's favorite demon, Kane has only been a world champion less than a handful of times. Despite his initial dominant streak that followed his arrival in the WWF, Kane wasn't really all that dominant when it came to championship gold. You see, Kane would win his first WWF championship at King of the Ring 1998, an event which is less remembered for giving the Monster his first title reign, and much more remembered for Mick Foley nearly ending his own life. Several times. Regardless, that night led to Kane's first real championship reign in the company. And given that this was at a point where Kane was mauling through the competition, beating down every and anyone who stepped in his path, and being that he was one of the most over acts in the industry at the time, you'd probably think that the Big Red Machine would get a lengthy world title run. I mean, Kane is WWF champion? That should have been a big deal, right?
Wrong!
Surprisingly, Kane would lose his championship the very next night on an episode of Raw's War, losing it back to the guy he just won it off of, Stone Cold Steve Austin. So in the grand scheme of things, Kane held his title for less than 24 hours, meaning that this was done for shock value and possibly a ratings ploy. Or who knows, maybe they wanted to build the legend of Stone Cold and give him an additional world title reign, why not? Regardless, this was not what one would expect from Kane at the time.
Will he be busted from ear to ear? Oh, Undertaker coming down here! Oh my God! Let's get and the target! Oh, just nailed it! Undertaker! Referee calling for the bell! Referee calling for the bell!
He then wouldn't win his next world championship until a full decade later when he won the ECW title off then champion Chavo Guerrero in an 11-second match at that year's WrestleMania. A match which wasn't scheduled for the event, and Kane was only chosen to face Chavo because he won a pre-show battle royal.
That makes sense to me.
Kane would go on to defend his title against Chavo Guerrero before eventually losing it to Mark Henry. And during his time as champion, Kane didn't really do all that much, and the fact that he'd been given a quote-unquote, imagine the air quotes here, world title, when his gimmick had an expired relevancy date, says more about how the company felt about the ECW brand than they did about the Big Red Machine. Honestly, that's the big issue with WWE's ECW champions. Very few felt relevant to the product at the time. The title wasn't thought of as a world title despite it being called one. And they kind of just handed the belt out as opposed to having champions seem like they earned it. I mean, just try to remember in your head who was WWE ECW champion. Kane, Matt Hardy, Chavo Guerrero, Jack Swagger. None of them were exactly setting the wrestling world ablaze. And that's saying something because one of them was Kane. And fire's kind of his thing. That's kind of what he does. Sometimes, depending on who's right. Who knows? 2 years later, Kane would once again become a champion by becoming Mr. Money in the Bank. And later that same night, he'd cash in on a vulnerable Rey Mysterio for his World Heavyweight Championship. This move made Kane the fastest Money in the Bank cash-in, and also made Kane the first wrestler in WWF history to have held every one of the company's world championships. The WWF title, the ECW title, and now the World Heavyweight title. And that should be quite an accomplishment. Except he didn't really do anything with any of them. To be fair, in the grand scheme of Kane's career, you'd have to consider this title reign his most successful. He defended the title against the former champion before finding himself in yet another feud with his brother, The Undertaker. A feud which surprisingly Kane dominated, with the dead man never getting so much as a victory on his younger brother this time around. Like I said, out of all of Kane's title reigns, this one has to be considered the most successful. Sure, the stuff he and his brother were doing at the time was a tired rehash that ultimately came off as campy sci-fi for the sake of the channel, but Kane, for the first time in his career, was treated like an actual champion. With the WWF title, he was just a shock victory that Cold Stone won right back. With the ECW title, he was just a dude with a belt on. It was a prop. There was no point. It was the same when he started coming out with his chain from See No Evil. It wasn't doing anything new for the character. It was just like, oh, he's doing that now? Okay, whatever. But with the World Heavyweight title, he was pushed, and his dominance was on full display as he was SmackDown's resident big bad for the time being. Of course, later the zaniness and camp factor would be kicked up to 11 as he'd enter into a feud with Edge, which saw Edge kidnap Kane's dad and assault mannequins he masqueraded around as the real deal. I don't even know what I could say to my own sentence. Oh yeah, and Edge the kidnapper, of course, was a face. Because why not? Kane the rapist was a face in the past, so, who cares about logic? Just throw that shit right out the window. There's no place here. The angle was dumb and goofy, and everyone was pretty much thankful when it came to an end, as Edge took the belt off the man of the hour. But like I said, again, this has to be considered his most successful world title run. So overall, that was Kane's time as a world champion. For as over as the gimmick and the character originally were, and for the length of his tenure in the company, it's strange thinking he was never given his time in the spotlight. Which I'm sure has a lot more to do with guys like The Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, and Triple H all dead set on the same prize. But still, I think they could have made a little bit more room for the monster. It's surprising. It's one of those things where you don't really think about it until you click on one of my videos and you're like, huh. Here I am, I'm making this video, and even I'm like, huh. But that's all I got. If you guys enjoyed these look backs at wrestlers' world title reigns, let me know. And if you hate it, same exact thing.
Well, let me tell you something, brother. You're watching the social injustice warrior, Infuso's channel, dude. So if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too want to become a VTard, don't forget to like and subscribe, and click that little bell icon to get updates and notifications. Ooh, tell him what up, Mach. Ooh, yeah. Follow the man on Twitter, yeah, because we all know it's not stalking if it's on the internet, yeah. Join the madness by joining the Discord, and if you have a moment of time and a free $1 to spare, head over to the SIJW's Patreon, dig it, where you can request videos, get exclusive videos, and early access to content, yeah. Or go down to PayPal, where you can buy the shirts, brother. But most importantly, just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.